Square Enix is a company with one of the most legendary catalogs in gaming: Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Kingdom Hearts, and a lot more than that. They also have a ton of beloved IPs like Parasite Eve and the Chrono series that rarely get touched anymore. And despite holding some of the industry's most beloved IP, the publisher has spent the last several years struggling to capitalize on that legacy. But it's not just about the old IP. They've tried to create new IP as well. Forspoken, Babylon's Fall, Foam Stars, banger game after banger game. Listen, we all want Square Enix to do well and continue to provide us the IPs that we know and love, as well as fresh new IPs from their best creators. However, it's also no secret that there's been a string of disappointing releases and mismanaged projects. But some recent news has happened that can change the very trajectory that Square Enix is on. In fact, not even can. The entire purpose of this is to do exactly that. However, it's not without concern, as this could cause some radical changes within Square Enix that affect our most beloved properties. But first, a word from our sponsor, Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming gives you Steam codes for games at a very discounted price, allowing you to save money on games that you were going to buy anyways. Right now, you can pre-order Elden Ring Night Rain for only $35. And the absolute best part is that they allow us every month to give away a free game of your choice. All you have to do is click the link in the description below, smack that participate button, and you are entered to win a new game every month. So be sure to stop overpaying for games and check out Instant Gaming. So recently, a Singaporean-based investment fund known as 3D Investment Partners has acquired a 5.47% stake in Square Enix Holdings. The stated purpose for acquiring the assets is, quote, pure investment, and depending on circumstances, to offer advice or make significant proposals to management. And you may be thinking, so what? What's the big deal here? Automaton Media summarizes this all pretty well, so I want to go ahead and read their article here. They said that 3D Investment Partners is known for being an activist investor, meaning that it seeks to buy significant stakes in companies in order to influence how they are managed. Please note that this term has nothing to do with political activism. So for all you culture warriors that are going to appear in the comment sections, this has nothing to do with that term activism, just so you know. Activist investors often target companies that are undervalued or suffering from poor management. Their strategy is generally to invest in these companies and then push management to take actions that will increase corporate value, such as enhancing shareholder returns, improving business portfolio, or replacing executives in order to secure a solid return on investment. This is a point of discussion that I've been talking about a lot recently. Shareholders influence and decide a lot of things within a publicly traded company, even down to what kinds of games get made in the first place. And they do own enough stake here to be fairly influential. The Automaton Media article continuing by saying, quote, this particular Singaporean activist happens to be somewhat infamous among business in Japan, having gained recognition through its investments in big corporations like Toshiba, Fujisoft, and Sapporo Holdings. As reported by Bloomberg, the investor has consistently shown an aggressive attitude towards Japanese investees, making demand for large-scale business reforms, requesting executive resignations and placement of external directors, and publicly criticizing poor management decisions. Shintaku magazine quotes a company head as calling 3D's demands heart-wrenchingly extreme, and a securities firm executive as calling the fund the most dynamic and feared activist in Japan. It might be worth mentioning that this reputation is from the business leader's perspective and not the consumer's perspective. The entire point of these activist groups is to force change when a company's leadership won't do it themselves. They buy up enough stake to get a seat at the table and start pressuring management to restructure, cut waste, and to attempt to unlock the value that's been buried under years of bad decisions. These are not the type of investors that invest quietly. As the name activists suggest, they invest invest to intervene. This is a sign that these investors believe that there is more potential from Square Enix than Square Enix has been able to deliver themselves. And they believe by investing into this company and having that level of influence is going to allow Square Enix to see its maximum potential. For Square Enix, this could be a turning point. The company has already started rethinking its strategy, cutting back on bloated release schedules, shifting away from single console exclusivity to multi-platform development, and promising to focus on quality over quantity. But with 3D investment partners now holding a meaningful stake, those changes may no longer be optional. They will be expected, and I imagine that this is going to put a large amount of pressure on management to deliver strong financial results and to cut underperforming projects. Almost exactly a year ago in May 2024, Square Enix had unveiled its new medium-term business plan, aptly titled Square Enix Reboot and Awakens, which sounds a lot like Square Enix A Realm Reborn, but honestly, it's that type of reboot that they could use at the moment. But it's not all upside. While activist investors like 3D investment partners can force much-needed accountability, their involvement can also carry some serious risks, especially when it comes to a creative-driven company like Square Enix. One of the biggest concerns is short-termism. Activist funds are, at their core, focused on increasing shareholder value, and typically they want to see results fast. This could potentially mean pressure to cut ambitions, long-term projects in favor of safer, more immediate, profitable releases. New IPs, experimental gameplay, and anything that doesn't fit a proven mold might be seen as too risky. As I talked about before, one of the reasons that turn-based was moved away from in terms of big AAA projects, that is, Final Fantasy, shareholders would not want to risk that much money on a big turn-based game, because third-person action games are the trend. Not that I thought that they were going to return back to turn-based for like Final Fantasy 17 anyway, but that's just an example of what type of influence that shareholders can hold. Creative bottlenecks are absolutely a possibility, and this would mean that producers and directors could find themselves boxed in, making decisions less based on creative instincts and more based on what's financially safe. I recently did a video on how Expedition 33, for example, a AA game that has been absolutely blowing up, is also a game that almost certainly would not be made at a publicly traded company. It would be seen as extraordinarily high risk, going against the trend of being a certain style of third-person action game for a style of turn-based that seems more niche. The parry mechanic is not the most accessible mechanic in the world, and yet you are expected to perform it in Expedition 33. But it would be really easy for investors to see that and say we're limiting our audience by making this mechanic mandatory. As a result, it's impossible for me to see this game being made by a big AAA company that's publicly traded. Another concern is the threat of internal disruption. Activist campaigns often come with restructuring, which can mean layoffs and studio consolidations. This also includes shutting down underperforming divisions, as well as potential downsizes. And that might be good for the bottom line, but it does risk damaging morale, losing talent, and creating uncertainty across the creative studios. But my biggest hope is that all of this is going to work out for the better, that Square Enix's management will be able to fire off on all cylinders and deliver us a brand new golden era for Square Enix games. But only time will tell, and game development takes so long that it will be a while before we see all the results of the changes that happen here. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below if you think that this is going to be a good thing for Square Enix, or if it's just going to create more shareholder pressure that could stifle creativity. And I'll see you all in the next video. Later, guys.